Diamond Boy, Part 5, Grace, Chapter 29. The morning I woke up at the Flying Tomato Farm, I was hot and sweating in one moment, cold and shivering the next. My stump was swollen, the skin was red and tender, and pus oozed from the wound. Stumpy's revenge for dousing him in the muddy Limpopo and dragging him through a game reserve. For next 2 days I drifted in and out of fever, thankful for the bed, the piles of freshly sliced and salted tomatoes, and the jugs of clean cold water that Boubacar kept bringing me to drink. I don't remember much about the Flying Tomato Farm, except that at one point I woke up to find a white woman with her blue eyes and blonde hair staring at me. She looked both concerned and sympathetic as she cleaned my wound and rebandaged it. Then I felt a sharp prick in my arm and went back to sleep. Stumpy must have liked her because the next day he stopped complaining and his swelling subsided. Later, Boubacar explained that she was a veterinarian called to the farm to attend a cow in labour, and that the shot in my arm had been an intramuscular antibiotic, the best she had to offer. She'd left a few antibiotic pills, but warned that gangrene could still set in if I didn't get to a hospital soon. Gerber, the burly, well-tanned foreman of the Flying Tomato Farm, was less helpful. "I'm running a business, not a hospital," he said, stopping just inside the doorway to the workers' dormitory. "Benjamin," he called to the white-haired old man who managed all the farm's refugee workers. "I want these two gone first thing tomorrow morning. Understood?" "Yes, boss." When Gerber had left, Benjamin turned to Boubacar. "I'm sorry, you'll have to go. These beds are for people who work here. Tomorrow more will come." "We understand, Madala," said Boubacar, using the respectful name for the older man. "You will get in no trouble from us." Benjamin lifted his hands in apology and left. "We'll have to leave tomorrow, Patson. I think early is best. My Congolese friends will drive us to Johannesburg. The journey will take maybe 6 or 7 hours. "I'll be ready," I said, showing him Grace's latest message on my newly charged phone. "Where are you, Patson? I'm in Alexandra Township. Det left me with an old man in a shack. Tried to escape but nowhere to go. Det found me. Come soon." And then later, "Det took my money. He wants me to work for him in Cape Town. What do I do? Please come. Tell her we'll be in Johannesburg tomorrow afternoon. Get an address." "We're close now, Patson," he said, laying his hand on my shoulder. I sent Grace the message, then turned to my last diary entry. "Boubacar, I wrote something about you." "About me?" he said with an embarrassed chuckle. "What did you write about this fellow Boubacar?" I opened my diary and I started reading my passage. When I had finished, Boubacar chuckled. "But at least she was a pretty cow doctor, yes," he said with a smile. I shrugged. "But why, Boubacar? I still don't understand why you are helping me." He ran a hand over his face and dropped his head onto his chest. Then he clasped his large hands together and I watched his fingers pulse in and out like a beating heart beneath his chin. And when he finally spoke, his voice was strained. "There is a war in my country. They call it the Democratic Republic of Congo, but it is not democratic. Many people are killed there. Rebel soldiers fighting the government. They came to my village when I was 14 and made me a soldier. There were other boys who'd been stolen from their families, but I went into the bush with the rebels because I hated the government. They had taken away my father and killed him. So I left my sister and my little brother with my mother and joined Reverend Lubango's Army of Assurance. It was a time of madness, drugs, alcohol, and dangerous words. The Reverend taught us how to fight and kill people. We would sit and drink, smoke marijuana, listen to his words that were driven into our heads. We followed every order just to keep the drugs coming. The things I did, terrible things, Pats, and I can never tell you. And I was a good soldier, too good. They made me a leader and they gave me my own boys so that I could turn them into soldiers as good as me. One day we were ordered to attack a village. It was always the same. Words, alcohol, drugs, more words until we were ready to kill. That night we hid in the bushes waiting for the storm to break. I led the way through the dark rain, running and firing at anything that moved. The villagers stood no chance. We cut them down, but then as the sun rose, the village seemed strangely familiar to me. I recognized a tree my brother and I used to climb, my mother's hut, my sister's toys. When I found my family, they looked no different from the other dead bodies. I started crying because I felt nothing. I was dead inside. After that day, I had no need for drugs, alcohol, and words. I only pretended to drink, and then I understood that Reverend Lubango's words were lies. I found a way back to myself, and when I looked at the boys that had followed me so blindly, I wanted to save them. One by one, I got them off drugs, and we found that we had the strength to resist Reverend Lubango. I led 7 of them out of the forest until the UN soldiers found us and took us in. They changed my life, except that I had nothing to live for. Boubacar paused to catch his breath, and when he finally looked at me, his face was streaked with tears. When you came to me in the forest, Patson, holding your sister's hand, I saw my little brother and sister coming back to me. My sister's name was also Grace. His shoulders started to shake as he gave way to his tears, and I clumsily leaned forward to embrace him. We will find Grace were the only words that I could manage. Diamond Boy, Chapter 30. Early the next morning we stood outside the Flying Tomato Farm, searching the dust road for the minibus that would take us to Johannesburg. My head buzzed with a headache and I shivered with fever despite the warm sunshine. The vet's pills had saved me from a raging infection, but they left me nauseous and woozy, so I did not continue with them. We both knew I was not ready to travel, but Foreman Gerber's orders and the late-night WhatsApp message from Grace had left us no choice. Determined had bought their train tickets to Cape Town and they were leaving at 3 o'clock. If all went well, Boubacar thought we could be at the train station by 2. There was no time for me to recover. We had to keep moving. I looked across the fields of tomato bushes that stretched towards the faraway mountains. While we waited, Boubacar explained that the white plastic tents protected the young bushes, and I was amazed at the gleaming tractors, the cultivating machines, the boxes stamped with a red tomato with angel wings. I had never seen any Zimbabwean farm like this. How is it possible that across the Limpopo people were without work and starving, and yet here there was such wealth? It was no wonder thousands of people were risking their lives to get here. In a nearby field, Innocent's lanky frame moved up and down as he picked tomatoes. He spotted me and waved furiously. I waved back, sorry to say goodbye. I had never met anyone quite like Innocent, so accepting and so kind. Here he comes, said Boubacar as a cloud of dust appeared over the horizon. But it was a police van. It drove slowly as it approached the gate. A black policeman in the passenger seat glanced our way. Then the brake lights flashed red, the van reversed, both doors flew open and two hefty officers got out. The white man was Sergeant Brandt, according to his brass badge. His partner, the owner of the pair of tree-trunk thighs, hitched up his trousers as he looked us up and down. Boubacar stepped in front of me, his hands slowly slipping into his backpack. ID, demanded the white man. Good day, Sergeant Brandt, said Boubacar pleasantly. I'm afraid we do not have our passports with us at present. We are visiting friends and... You from the Congo, Frenchie? Boubacar barely nodded. And you, boy? You from Zimbabwe? Yes, sir. Get in the van. You're both illegals. Let's go, shouted the black policeman, making a move towards me. Please, Corporal Marshal, there's no need to shout, soothed Boubacar. We are all intelligent men. Perhaps we might come to some arrangement. We've already made our arrangement, chuckled Marshal. Boubacar's beguiling French accent had lulled them into believing he was harmless, but the tension in his muscles suggested that at any moment he might pull his knife. If he did, these overweight policemen would not stand a chance. No, Boubacar, I said, hobbling between them. Please, sir, my sister has been kidnapped and we have to find her. I attempted my most affecting voice, playing the cripple card as best I could. The policeman only shrugged. That's at least a new one. Now get in, ordered Brunt, opening the back of the van. With only a slight hesitation, Boubacar freed his hand from his bag to help me into the van. Marshall was laughing as he padlocked the door. Easiest 10 grand I ever made, he said. Doors slammed and we felt the vehicle make a 3-point maneuver and then barrel down the dirt road the way they had come. Boubacar took out his cell phone and spoke rapidly in French as I tried to steady myself in the hurtling van. Please, sir, my little sister's been kidnapped, I yelled through the hatch in the front seat. We have to be at the train station in Johannesburg by 2 o'clock. Please, someone's taking her to Cape Town. Please, she's only 9 years old. Matthew slammed shut the dividing window. I turned back to Boubacar, who stared grimly out the small window in the rear door. At the police station we'll explain everything. I can show them Grace's WhatsApp messages. Patson, they're not taking us to the police station. The drive to Messina took almost 2 hours. We sped past several other men on the side of the road. Outside of the town, people burdened with luggage, plastic containers and pots, carrying children on their back, were trying to get through the front gates beneath the sign, Messina Showground. There is nowhere else to put the people coming over the border. Thousands of them, explained Boubacar. In the fields beyond, I saw hundreds of makeshift shelters packed tightly together. On the pavement outside, people were camped out in the open, their clothes, blankets and bags piled around them and hanging from the fence. Women cooked food on the pavement, children were being washed in buckets. Further along, when we stopped at an intersection where there was an army trooper carrier and two police vans marked, I could see a large billboard. We know why you are in South Africa. Life in Zimbabwe is murder. But please go back to vote. We can all be free. Two men on the ladder were scraping off the sign, and across the street a small crowd was shouting at them to leave it alone. They held placards with slogans, Free Zimbabwe, Arrest War Criminal Mugabe, We Want Free Elections. South African soldiers stood silently watching, their rifles pointed casually at the ground. Boubacar's cell phone buzzed and he answered in rapid French. Then he nudged me aside to peer through the window. Come on, he muttered as our van picked up speed and swung around a corner. I lost my balance and fell hard onto the floor. Hey, shouted Boubacar, smacking his fist against the window. Be careful, you have a sick boy here. His protest made no difference. Brand switched on the siren and we raced down the main road, right past the Messina police station. But now I knew why. On the way to Messina, Boubacar had described the network that existed between the Zimbabwean military and certain rogue members of the South African police. Political refugees from across the border were easily identified by the spies in their midst, picked up by the South African police and placed straight back into the arms of the Zimbabwe Central Intelligence Organization. That's why I did not want to come anywhere near Messina, he had said. There are too many spies working for Mugabe's soldiers. Commander Jesus must have alerted his contacts on this side of the border, and we had been easy to find. Not even the fast-flowing river in the game reserve seemed preferable to this hot metal box bulleting around Messina, where Commander Jesus was surely waiting for us. I could hardly think straight. I was sweating and thirsty, and my head felt as if it were about to burst. Commander Jesus would never let me go, and I would never save grace. All I wanted was to lie down and give over to my exhaustion. Ah, there they are, said Boubacar behind us. I dragged myself over to look through the small window, but saw only traffic weaving across the road. 2 cars back, that yellow Bolt Safeguard security van. Patson, this is our last chance. Just off the main road, Sergeant Brandt pulled over. I saw the yellow security van past us and turn into the palm-lined drive of the Blue Flamingo Hotel. A small red hatchback taxi followed close behind. Brandt and Marcia are discussing how to hand us over, whispered Boubacar. If the wrong people see, they will be in big trouble. We moved closer to the hatch to listen. Let's just leave them here, said Marcia. The cripple can't go far. And how do we get our money, said Brandt. Okay, he can leave an envelope at restriction. I'll go get it and you turn them over to him here. It's very open, said Sergeant Brandt. We should have taken them to the military base. Too late now. Phone him. Let's get this over with. No, you stay here, decided Brandt. Let me go into the hotel, find him, get the money and arrange for somewhere else to drop them off. Then he can follow us there. We drop them, we leave. Our hands are clean. The van bounced as Brandt got out, slammed the door and walked toward the hotel entrance. Marsha came around the back, checked up and down the road and lit a cigarette. Boubacar was texting furiously. Talk to him, he hissed. I hiked myself up to the rear window and knocked on it. Can you get me some water, Mr. Marshu? It's very hot in here, I said, trying to smile. Marshu only glanced at me. It's true what I told you. My sister's name is Grace. A man took her from our home in Marangia and now he's taking her to Cape Town. I have to go to a hospital. My leg is badly infected. Please help me. Corporal Marshy took another drag on his cigarette and threw the butt on the ground. Sorry for your trouble, boy. There's nothing I can do. He turned at the sound of footsteps coming around the side of the van. Corporal Marshy, said a man in the army fatigues. Yes, answered Marshy, clearly taken by surprise at his familiarity. Sergeant Brand sent me for them. You have to wait 5 minutes and then pick him up outside the lobby. But then the commander will have paid him and their business will be done. Marshy glanced inside the van. Please, sir, do not give us to this man, yelled Boubacar, suddenly beating on the van door. He is CIO. He will kill us. Please, sir, I beg you, do not listen to him. Shut up, yelled Marshu, putting a key in the padlock and opening the door. Get up, get out and shut up. Cool air swept into the van as Boubacar jumped out and turned back to help me. Act frightened, he whispered. I did not need to act. I was terrified. I shuffled through the door and climbed onto Boubacar's back. I clung awkwardly to his neck, clutching my crutches and kick bag. 5 minutes to the CIO officer, then you go to the hotel and pick up your sergeant. Understood? He gripped Boubacar's arm, dragging him forward. Get a move on, you two, he ordered. The commanders waited long enough. I gripped tightly to Boubacar's neck as the army man marched us around the bend of the hotel road and out of sight. And there was the bolt van, its driver waiting. I've got them. Yes, sir, at once, sir, he shouted, slamming the door of the empty van for effect. Then he let go of Boubacar and indicated that we run a little further along the road. Tres Pedregas, Boubacar whispered, slapping the CIO man on his back. The red hatchback was parked behind a tall hedge. Regis tore off his fatigue jacket, threw it on the floor of the car and jumped into the driver's seat as Boubacar heaved me into the back. Stay down, Boubacar ordered, wedging my crutches and his body onto the floor before pulling the door shut. What do you see, Regis? Nothing yet, came the answer from the front. Okay, here comes the sergeant, so stay down. He's almost back with Marshu. He looks pleased with himself. And there goes Patrice in our van. Let's see if they take the bait. I heard Brand cursing Marshu, the screech of their siren and the squeal of tires. Regis started the red taxi and drove slowly back to the main road. The wail of the police siren faded in the opposite direction. They're following him, said Boubacar, looking out the back window. Bravo, Regis. Regis only chuckled. It was a good plan, Boubacar. When they do stop Patrice, they'll find an empty van driven by a properly credentialed security guard for bolt safeguard. I struggled to sit up. And will we be out of Musina? It was hard to believe that only moments ago I'd given up and now we were free. Yes, leaving Commander Jesus waiting for nothing at the Blue Flamingo, Boubacar added. You are a very lucky boy to be travelling with this man, said Regis, grinning at me in the rearview mirror. He is a hero among us Congolese. Boubacar cut him off. We've wasted enough time. We have to be at the Johannesburg train station no later than 2:30, Regis. Ah, Boubacar, you know that is impossible. It will take us at least. You will drive like the wind, Regis. And I felt the engine surge. South Africa flashed by my window, one-stop petrol stations with jungle gyms and swings, gleaming fast food shops along double-laned highways free of potholes, cultivated fields dotted with tractors and crop sprayers, luxury vehicles, white children staring out of closed-up windows, battered minibuses packed with people, pulling trailers piled high with furniture and luggage. I sent Grace message after message about our progress along the N1 highway through the towns of Louis Trichardt and Polokwane, but she never responded. I kept checking the time, willing it to go slower. Midday. In 3 hours the train would be pulling out of the station. A sign flashed by, Johannesburg 310 kilometers, and I leaned forward to check the speedometer. The needle hovered around 130. We'll never make it, Boubacar. At this speed it will take us nearly 3 hours, I protested. Time collapsed into a feverish haze, punctuated by stabs from Stumpy. I checked my phone, but the numbers on my screen no longer made any sense. I jerked awake. Traffic was rushing past and we had stopped. The front seats were empty. Disorientated, I opened the door. Don't get out, Regis snapped at me and then cursed. What's going on? Flat tire, said Boubacar. Stay in the car, it's almost finished. He rattled off a string of French words to Regis, who responded angrily. I cannot go faster, he said, tightening the wing nuts. Forget the hubcap, said Boubacar, tossing it through my open window. My phone buzzed with a message from Grace, and I realized it was already 2:15. At Joburg Park Station, platform 17, where are you? What must I do? Tell her we're almost there. No, we're not, snapped Regis. We have at least another 13 minutes, and that she must not get on that train. And Regis, I'm driving. Boubacar pulled onto the busy highway and swung across the fast lane to a chorus of angry hooting. We spread past walled suburbs with fancy trees, fancy houses, and iron gates, and in the faraway hills smoke rose from shanty towns, tin roofs glinting in the sun. I sat rigid, focused only on the digits on my cell phone screen. At 2:52 p.m., Boubacar pulled in front of the train station entrance, jumped up and ran down the escalators two at a time. I'll park, shouted Regis as I stumbled out, hooked my crutches in my arms and spotted an elevator. As I descended, I gasped at the scale of Johannesburg Park Station, the size of 2 football fields, with the huge metal rafters stretching above 45 platforms. At the bottom, the elevator doors opened to hundreds of people moving in every direction. I have to go to platform 17. Which way? I asked a woman passing by. You don't look very well, boy, she said, pointing to the left. I threaded my way through the crowds, using my crutch to clear my passage. I was covered in sweat, but when I looked up, I was only on platform 9. I was crutching past platform 15 when I heard the announcement, 3 o'clock train for Cape Town departing from platform 17. Departing now for Cape Town, platform 17, all aboard. There was still time. I swung my crutches forward, taking bigger and bigger strides. Platform 16, one more to go, and then there was the train, engines humming. Boubacar must be there already. He must already be aboard, I thought, as the train slid away from the platform. And then I saw Boubacar running alongside the train as it picked up speed. No, I screamed, get on board. Boubacar glanced back towards me and stopped running. The 3 o'clock train had left on time. I fumbled for the phone buzzing in my pocket. On train, I saw Boubacar. Diamond Boy, Chapter 31. Once, when the world was still a safe place of bedtime stories, soft babysitters, and gentle mothers, my father told me that before people rose from the pool of life, the Great Spirit created the first goddess in human form. This goddess, the Great Mother Mai, was created so that she could make the stars, the sun, and the earth. When she finished her task, the Great Mother Mai was lonely, said my father in his deep, serious voice, and she wept so many tears that the stars trembled and fell from the sky. How can stars fall from the sky, Baba? I asked, imagining the black void in the heavens. Oh, but they can, Patson, and when they do, they can cause great damage, replied my father. So the Great Spirit commanded the goddess to stop her tears of loneliness, but she replied that she could not stop crying until she had a companion to comfort her. Who can I talk to in my lonely hours? She asked the Great Spirit. I have only the barren plains, the silent mountains, and the stupid stars that twinkle foolishly at me, she wailed. The Great Spirit took pity on her and agreed to grant her wish. But what manner of companion will you send me? She asked. The Great Spirit replied that as she was female, her companion should be her opposite, and thus a male. Well, Mai was so happy with this news that she grew 4 immense breasts, each with a Joseph, stop embroidering, laughed my mother, laughing, holding Grace asleep in her arms. Patson, don't listen to your father. Mai did not grow 4 breasts, no matter what your father says. Like all good storytellers, my father paused to pour his tea while I waited ever so still. When he continued, it was not about breasts, but rather Mai's curiosity about the companion promised to her by the Great Spirit. Being the only woman on earth, the Great Mother Mai was vain and wanted to know if her mysterious companion would match her in her own beauty. The Great Spirit thought for a while and then said, in the boundless reaches of infinity, nothing is ugly, nothing is beautiful. That doesn't make sense, Baba. I threw myself backward on the floor, and my father laughed at my puzzled expression. Of course it does, Patson. Remember that all is created equal in the eyes of the Great Spirit. There is nothing ugly or beautiful. All that the Great Spirit created is good. Do you understand? I nodded, in part just to keep the story going. Well, the Great Spirit told her that the male would bring her contentment and that together they would bring forth life upon earth, he continued. But what will he look like? I asked a second time. Will he be as lovely as I? The Great Spirit insisted that she had to be patient. But oh, how the Great Mother Mai burnt with curiosity, wondering what kind of contentment her companion would bring, and wishing above all else that he be as beautiful as she. And as she waited patiently for the first rays of light, as you know, Patson, women can never be very patient. My father smiled at my mother, who was gently shaking her head. When Mai thought she could wait no longer, she heard an awful voice calling hoarsely to her. Come, O my mate, I await thee here, my father said in a low, gravelly voice which made me shiver. Fever chills dragged me back along to the humming of tires on tar, punctuated by the rush and rattle of a passing truck. Foreign words, splintered conversations, my name uttered over and over. Patson, Patson, are you all right? Let him sleep, Regis. The kid looks bad, but he's strong. 2 more hours to Bloemfontein. We can fill up and eat. Then your shift begins. Relax, Boubacar, there's time. We'll be in Cape Town before the train. Their words melted into the droning of the engine as I willed my father's voice to return. She was so excited, Patson, that with a cry of joy she reached out her arms to welcome her companion. Then in a thundering cloud of dust, boulders began to move from beneath the mountainside, and hungry limbs reached out of the ground for her lithe, beautiful form. And she called to him, my mate, I am here. But then she grew silent, seeing that the limbs that reached for her were not arms like her own. What was it, Baba? What came out of the mountain? Must you excite the boy just before he goes to sleep, Joseph, chided my mother, but I knew she was listening as eagerly as I was. Well now, Patson, what do you think it might be? I don't know, Baba, tell me. They were the arms of a creeping vine whose bark was studded with jagged pieces of granite and diamonds, and branches that had sprung from the top of the biggest baobab that had ever grown on the earth. And in the middle of the monstrous trunk emerged dozens of bulging, bloodshot eyes, burning with hunger for my... Easy, Joseph, warned my mother. Beneath the eyes a wicked mouth grinned, and a long green tongue like the hide of a crocodile licked its granite lips. Come, my beloved, come to me, my father used a low voice. Then the tree roared, and its vines drew my close. Its diamond-studded mouth bruised her silvery lips with a savage kiss. I am the tree of life, thy mate, and I desire thee. I screamed, and my mother laughed. Stop it, Joseph, he'll wake up Grace. But my father's story was in full flight, and his voice took on the panicked, breathy tones of the goddess. No, cried Mai, you are not my mate. You are an ugly, monstrous thing. Release me. But the tree laughed and drew her closer. You are my heart's desire. I did not catch you only to release you, he said, his branches holding her ever tighter, until the baobab towered over her and... Okay, Joseph, that's enough, interrupted my mother. I think Patson knows what happened next. I looked from my father's twinkling eyes and noticed my mother's blush. They made jiggy, I said proudly, causing my parents much mirth. In a manner of speaking, Patson, my father laughed, but when the tree finally released Mai, she fled across the plains and complained bitterly to the Great Spirit about the horrible mate he had given you. You have had your wish, now what more do you want? Was his reply. Having settled Grace on the blanket, my mother picked up the story, this time cradling me in her arms. She told me how the terrified goddess fled into a valley to get away from the hideous tree. But no matter how far or fast she fled, the tree of life pursued her. You see, Patson, the tree was on fire with love, and like any young man, she said, looking at my father, he had no wish to let his bride return home to her mother. Indeed, chuckled my father, and after many years of flight and pursuit, the tree and the goddess plunged into the waters of the great Kariba lake. There Mai streaked through the water like a silvery fish, and then soared like an owl into the night sky. Below, her mate lay stuck in the mud until a desperate idea pierced his sluggish wooden brain. Not so sluggish, interrupted my father. He searched for the mighty round rock at the bottom of the lake, which he rolled into a ball, and with one lightning movement with all his branches, he hurled it upward at his love, now almost lost to him in the stars. She said, straight and true went the soaring ball, continued my father, and the goddess felt a great blow on her silvery head, plunged back through the stars, the clouds, and the air, limp and unconscious. But to save her, cut in my mother, the great ugly tree caught her in his outstretched limbs. My dearest beloved, he crooned, I do so love thee. Meanwhile, said my father, the great ball that bounced off the goddess's head went into orbit and became our own shining moon. I opened my eyes to see that moon racing through the clouds. I did not want to leave my mother and father or the warm embrace of their love. The story was not over yet, but my mouth was dry and Stumpy was restless. Water, can I have some water? A bottle was placed in my hand and I drank mouthful after mouthful, not caring that some of it spilt down my shirt. It felt cool against my burning chest. How much further? Bubakar listed the names of towns we'd passed, and we still got the Karoo ahead of us. But Patson, as soon as we get to Cape Town, you're going to hospital. But what about Grace? I can't. I will find her. I reached inside my kit bag, saw that there were no new messages from her, and not enough ointment left to make any difference to Stumpy's mood. I lay back, searching again for the moon racing through the clouds. Then my mother's arms were encircling me, and then the Great Spirit, in his almighty wisdom, declared the moon the guardian of love, said my mother. And to this day the moon makes lovers seek each other's arms, and wives the comfort of their children's father, my father added, looking into my mother's eyes. You see how romantic your father is becoming, little half and half, said my smiling mother. Time for bed, young man, he said, picking me up and carrying me on his shoulders. Your mother and I need time alone to work out some details of the story. He laid me down in my bed, running his hand over my head. One day you will tell the story to your own children, Patson. Think what a fine day that will be. You must always remember that the story you tell makes you who you are. Diamond Boy, Chapter 32. How did you get here, Patson? Could I say I'd swum my way from a place of love and safety, moving steadily back to the throbbing pain that still lived in my leg? that I drifted to the surface of the sensation where Stumpy was waiting, sharpening his teeth. The man wore a white mask and a funny floral cap, yet his soft brown eyes twinkled with good humour. "It's a long story," I replied, "and I'd love to hear it." He touched me gently. "I'm Dr. David Morris, and we're going to have a good long look at that leg of yours. There's nothing to worry about. You're going to sleep for a while and we'll speak again later. Everything's going to be all right, Patson." I looked round at the other people in what could only be an operating room. They all wore masks, gloves, rubber gloves and identical gowns, caps, and they seemed alert and busy. A great disk of light hovered over me and a masked woman leant over me. "I'm Dr. Kaplan, Patson, and I'm going to put you to sleep with this," she said, showing me a plastic cup attached by a hose to a machine. "All I want you to do is breathe deeply and count to 10. I did that and forgot what came after 6. "Patson, your mother has come to see you." It would be nice to see my mother again. I had much to tell her. We used to sit at the kitchen table every night when I came home from school, drinking sweet tea and eating oranges cut into wedges. I would tell her about my lessons and the funny things I had said in class, which always made her laugh. I loved having her completely to myself. Now there are days when I can't even remember what she looks like. "Wake up, Patson, your mother is here." Floating upwards seemed easier now. I became aware of the coolness of the sheets, the size of the pillow, the tall feeling of the bed. Outside the window, Cape Town's flat mountain, and the best part of it was that Stumpy was numb and quiet. "I think he's awake, Mrs. Moyle. Just give him a moment. He's still a bit woozy from the anesthetic. Patson, your mother is here." How can my mother be in this Cape Town hospital? I opened my eyes, but the bright sun was streaming through the window and forced them shut again. "Oh, Patson, I'm so glad I found you. I've been looking everywhere. I've been so worried." There was something familiar about that voice. I opened my eyes and the wife was standing at my bedside. I could not speak, could only stare, not believing my eyes. But it was definitely her in a tight-fitting sunflower patterned dress, smiling at me from a perfectly made-up mouth, patting my hand. If the wife was here, then Commander Jesus must be here too. I pulled my hand away and looked wildly around the room, silently imploring the nurse to do something. "I'll be back in a minute, Mrs. Moyle. I'm sure you'd like some privacy." "Don't leave," I wanted to scream. "This woman is not my mother." But nothing came out of my mouth. I reached for my cell phone, only to remember I'd given it to Boubacar, who must still be looking for Grace. I thrashed around for the call button, but found only the TV remote. The wife chuckled at my feeble attempt. She had already swept it off the bed. As the door closed, her pomegranate smile hardened. "Where are they, Patson?" she said, opening the small cabinet next to my bed. Hopelessly, I watched her rifle through my stuff. "You led us on a goose chase, you little bastard, but did you really think you could get away?" And suddenly I wanted to laugh. It started as a little bubble in my chest and it became a cough. "You may have found me," I thought, "but my Garazis were lost in Marangi a long time ago." The wife pulled my sheet off me and flung it to the floor. I lay helpless in my hospital gown with a drip in my arm attached to a pole beside my bed. Stumpy was swaddled in thick new bandages, my knee resting over a pillow. The wife gazed at my leg. Good grief, that's disgusting. But for someone with only one leg, you've covered a lot of ground, Patson. Now where are the diamonds? She ran her hand under my pillow, the corners of my bed, even under Stumpy before she turned out the drawers of my bedside table. I don't know where they are, I managed. He always gets what he wants, you know, she said, her red nails ticking out a short message on her cell phone. He wanted me and I didn't have much choice in the matter. You mustn't deny him what he wants, Patson. He can get very angry. You were always stubborn, just like your poor father. She looked out the window into the car park. Moments later, the ward door opened and a man backed into the room pulling a wheelchair. He kicked the door closed and rolled it next to my bed. Commander Jesus. I've checked everything. They're not here, she said. Pack it all up, he demanded. We're taking everything. Then he turned his full attention to me. Had I known what you'd found on my mind, Patson, I would never have let you leave. Such a terrible accident. But all you had to do was bring me the garages and it would never have happened. He yanked the drip from my arm, placed his hand on my chest and pressed me hard into the bed. It's too late now, but I wonder what you would have chosen, your garages or your leg. He stank of sour beer and stale perspiration. I tried to wrestle free, but he lifted me off the bed as if sweeping me up like a bag of laundry and threw me into the wheelchair. The wife picked up my crutches. I nearly had you in Messina. I should never have relied on those South African police fools. But they did tell me how poor little Gracie had been taken to Cape Town and how your Congolese friend was trying to get you to hospital. He grabbed the sheet from the floor and tucked it firmly around my legs, pinning my arms at my sides. He hooked my kit bag over the handle and leant down close to my ear. You and I are going to have a man-to-man talk about mining. You're going to tell me how the Guyana syndicate steals from my mine, and when we finish talking, you will return my stolen diamonds. We left the ward and headed down the corridor. If anyone had bothered to look at us, they would have seen a happy mother reunited with her son, being wheeled out of the hospital by a kind uncle. Diamond Boy, Chapter 33. I don't have them, I croaked as Commander Jesus rolled me toward the hospital's entrance. You've been chasing me for nothing. I lost them in Marange. That's not what Jamu told us, said the wife. Jamu doesn't know anything, you stupid woman. What did you call me, stupid? Shut up, both of you, hissed Commander Jesus, walking rapidly toward the glass doors. You can have your family fight later. She's no family of mine, I retorted, feeling power return to my voice and clarity to my brain, as I realized I would have no chance once they had me out of the hospital. Stay right where you are. The wife and Commander Jesus stopped as Regis, Dr. Morris, and two burly hospital guards surrounded us. You're not taking that boy anywhere, said Regis. Commander Jesus' eyes shot towards the extras just as a South African police van pulled up. Tires screeching and two policemen dashed up to the hospital steps towards us. I'm taking my boy home with me right now, blurted the wife, standing behind me and placing her hands on my shoulders. You can't stop me. I'm Mrs. Moyle, and here's my son. Patson is still under my care, Mrs. Moyle, and no one can leave this hospital without properly signing the required release papers, Dr. Morris said calmly. I am not your son, I said, shaking her hands off me. My father might have married you, but you were never my mother. I rose from the wheelchair, snatched my crutches away from the wife, hooked them under my arms, turned towards Commander Jesus, now full of courage. This is the man who blew off my leg and killed my father, I said loudly, so that everyone in the room could hear me. The two policemen stepped forward, blocking his escape. He's a commander of the 5th Brigade of the Zimbabwean Army. He took over the Marangi mines and murdered hundreds of miners. He has been chasing me since I left Zimbabwe because he thinks I have diamonds, when all I own in the world are these crutches and that bag. If you don't believe me, ask her. I stared straight at the wife. She has already searched everything in my room, and now they have tried to kidnap me. As powerful and angry as I felt, I was still too weak to stand for long. Regis caught me before I hit the floor and helped me back into the wheelchair. Then he rolled me back through the hospital lobby, and I glanced over my shoulder to see the wife arguing with Dr. Morris and a policeman holding her arm. But the best part was seeing the hospital security guards hand Commander Jesus over to the police, their handcuffs at the ready. What will happen to him? I asked Regis. The police in Cape Town no doubt have their own ways of dealing with men from other countries who attempt a kidnapping from a state hospital. But how did they? Don't forget that Boubacar is a great soldier. He ordered me to stay here and watch you. When I saw them taking you from your room, I called the doctor, who called security, who called the police. Has he found Grace? Not yet, but he will. Regis took me back to my room, where the nurse could not stop apologizing as she reconnected my drip. She told me she was your mother and she showed me her passport. I'm so sorry, Patson. She can be quite convincing. It's not your fault, I said, pulling up the sheets and resting my head against the pillows. I closed my eyes, exhausted after the sudden exertion. Rest now, we'll talk later, said Regis. I'll be outside if you need me. Once I was alone, I opened my eyes and felt the trembling that had started in my hands work its way up my arms. I took a deep breath, exhaled, and reminded myself that I was safe and that Commander Jesus was no longer chasing me. I let out another long, slow breath, and this time I felt relief. I had defeated him. When I opened my eyes again, Dr. Morris was closing the door behind him. It's been quite a morning, young man, he said, placing a metal tray on the side of my bed. How are you feeling? I'm okay, I suppose, although my throat's sore and I get dizzy when I stand up. Those are the normal symptoms of an anesthetic wearing off, he said, checking my pulse and temperature. By tomorrow you'll feel a lot better. Then he smiled as he sat down beside my bed. I had a long conversation with Mrs. Moyle. She's not my mother, I said abruptly. I know that, Patson, but you're still a minor and legally she's responsible for her. But that's impossible, you don't understand, I said as my reasons poured out of me. She abandoned us. She danced for Commander Jesus when my father's body lay in an unmarked grave. I can never forgive her and I don't want anything to do with her. I didn't realize how loud I was getting until the doctor laid his hand on my arm. It's okay, Patson, I understand. Calm down. The hospital's security guards have removed her, and I don't think she'll be coming back. As far as I'm concerned, Boubacar brought you to the hospital, and he can be the one who signs you out. Is that all right? Thank you, Doctor. Now, I need to talk to you about your leg. The operation we performed this morning is called a debridement, and that means we cut away all the damaged tissue and infection around the wound so that it will heal properly. Thankfully, there was no sign of gangrene and I was able to stretch the skin around the wound to make a healthy stump that will hold your future prostheses nicely. You're a strong boy, and with physiotherapy and regular exercise, I'll know you'll get the full strength back in your upper leg. How does it feel now? Whatever you did, Dr. Stumpy has gone quiet. The horrible pain is gone. That's good news, and what I have here may make you feel even better, he said, picking up the metal tray. Part of the debridement process is to remove any foreign objects in the wound, and yours was caused by a landmine. It was possible that there were shards of metal, dirt, even pieces of clothing or shoes still inside. So I did a meticulous cleaning of the wound, and I have to say I was quite surprised at what I found. He handed me the tray. My 3 Garazis sparkled up at me, the Anger Stone, the Rain Stone, and the Dream Stone, shining bright in the corner of the tray. I picked them up one at a time, their familiar size and shape hurling me back to a time when I had mud between my toes, water up to my knees, and the sun on my back as I sieved and sieved and sieved. They caused quite a stir around the operating table. The doctor smiled at me, but I was too bewildered to respond. Then I was back in the photocopying room with Ivy's holding me down, his granny boiling the Garazis in her pot and the red-hot iron glowing in the dark. She'd hidden the stones in the wound of my leg, the one place that she was sure no one would find them. You didn't know they were there? No, I didn't. I let them fall back into the tray. I thought so. I knew you were telling the truth in the foyer, he said, smiling. Whoever put them in your wound knew what they were doing. It was an old lady. People called her Dr. Moody. She worked with the soldiers in the bush war. I answered, still stunned, staring down at the stones that I had for so long prized above all else. Stones that I had believed had been lost. Stones that had caused me so much trouble. I don't know why or whether I deserved my garazis, but there they were, lying in the corner of the metal tray. The first because of the angry words of Banda, the second dislodged from the bank by torrential downpour, and the most beautiful one of all sent to me in a dream by my Shavi. I remember the flickering candles, the smell of herbs and burnt blood, the tinkle of diamonds boiling in an oil pot. All you need is within you, the old woman had said, and now I understood. And in truth, I had relied on something deep within myself, but it was something no diamond could buy. Take them away, I said quietly, handing Dr. Morris the tray. I don't want them. I don't want to ever see them again. He looked surprised. These are your stones, Patson. Didn't you find them? Yes, they're my stones. My father and I worked together on Bunda Hill until Commander Jesus took over the mine and called it my Majuru. My father was shot by Commander Jesus' soldiers, and I found these. I stopped. My words were all wrong, as if finding the stones had been a sort of compensation for losing my father. No, that's not what I meant. My father was shot by the soldiers simply because he was a miner, and all that I have from my time at Rangier, I could not go on. My voice had turned to stone. Then they do belong to you, Patson. But I don't want them, I said. You take them. Use them for your hospital or something. Dr. Morris looked down at me and waited, and even as I was wishing he would take them away, I felt the desire to hold them building up inside me again. And in that very same instant I hated them and prized them. I wanted nothing to do with them, but I wanted everything they could do for me. And then I understood that owning these stones was a responsibility, one that I was not yet strong enough to deal with. Please, Doctor, take them away. Okay, Patson, I will keep them in the hospital safe, and later we can discuss the matter with Boubacar. You trust the man who brought you here? With my life. Well then. But now it's time for you to rest and grow stronger. I will ask the nurse to give you a mild sedative, and I want you to sleep as much as you can, he said, pressing the nurse's call button. I want to see you up and about. That's all I care about. He left as the nurse came in to give me the pills. Once I was in bed, I closed my eyes and felt my body sinking into the bed. My mind was racing, my thoughts spinning out like a spider web. I carried the stones in my legs all this time, completely unaware, and they had caused me such pain on the journey. Lying there, I remembered some of the last words my father had said to me. Never let the stones become more than you, Patson. I won't, Baba, I promise you, I mumbled out loud, remembering how I had turned my back on my father, pretending to be asleep on the last night we were together. Rest now, son, that's the most sensible thing to do. The body needs time to recover. You will be strong again, but first you must rest. My father's presence in this room was overwhelming. You are right, Baba. You are always right. Diamond Boy, Chapter 34. Wake up, Patson, Grace whispered into my ear. You've been sleeping too long. I felt my eyelids being prized gently open, and my sister's face came into focus. For a brief moment I saw hints of my mother in her eyes and my father in the shape of her cheekbones. It all had the feeling of a dream until her fingers stroked my cheek, a warm, soft breath on my face, and I knew she was real. Grace, I said, smiling, you're here. I struggled to sit upright, blinked away tears, and embraced my little sister, folding her tightly in my arms. We clung to each other. She was my family, my only connection to my parents, and the most important person in my life. Boubacar, I asked, and there he was, standing next to Regis at the foot of my bed, grinning at us. I did not rescue your sister. Mademoiselle Gracie rescued herself, he said, chuckling. I turned to Gracie, and her eyes sparkled with pleasure and pride. Don't look so surprised, Patson, but what happened? How did you? When I saw Boubacar on the platform in Johannesburg, I knew I would have to get away from determined by myself, as she explained. So before the train got to Cape Town, when it was late at night, I pretended to be asleep. When I heard determined snoring, I went looking for the conductor. I told him what had happened to me and how you and Boubacar had come for me at the station and how we had just missed each other. He was a very nice man and he let me stay in his room for the rest of the journey. I didn't see Determined after that. And when the train arrived in the Cape Town station, added Boubacar, I was looking for that scoundrel until I saw a girl in a Girl Guide uniform wearing my tie, and it was Mademoiselle Gracie getting off the train with the conductor. She ran straight to me, introduced me to her conductor friend, and voila, your sister had organized her own escape. And Determined, I asked. He said he had an auntie in Cape Town, and after the jamboree he would take me to live with her, she answered, rolling her eyes. He knew you were following us. After we missed each other in Johannesburg, I told him that Boubacar was after him. He was very frightened of you, Boubacar. Stupid young man, growled Boubacar. Just as while he ran away, said Regis, Boubacar would have eaten him for breakfast. It felt so good to laugh with relief and wonder at these people standing around my bed. And then we were talking, one on top of each other, words overflowing, sentences interrupted and completed, recounting our separate journeys to Cape Town. I revelled in Grace's surprise and exclamations at how we had crossed the Limpopo and run through the game park. Grace explained how Doctors Without Borders in Messina had taken Sidi and No Matter, and how frightened she'd been to be alone with Determined. Regis hilariously demonstrated his role as a fake CIO agent, and Grace gave a troubling account of the tense time she'd spent in the Alexandra township. Boubacar repeatedly promised to repay every one of Regis' speeding fines, and Grace had told how determined had thought she was just playing games on her cell phone, and then how brave she'd had to be to walk through carriage after carriage in the middle of the night looking for a conductor. Boubacar said he'd been worried about my deteriorating condition on the road trip, but that the emergency staff had been so quick and efficient in whisking me away. Regis described how I'd spoken to the wife and stood up to Commander Jesus on one leg. Grace's hand never left my own as we talked and laughed together, and I felt myself unwilling to let her out of my sight for a moment, acutely aware of what I could have lost. "What are you staring at, Patson? At how much you've grown up in 3 weeks. The last time I saw you were at the shed surrounded by toys." "I never want to go back there, never," she said, squeezing my hand. "That part of our life is over, Grace. We are not going back to the sheds. You will never be alone like that again." She wrapped her arms around me and I could feel her body trembling against mine. When she pulled away, she was crying. "You sound just like Baba, Patson, all serious and kind." I could never have known, but when I left Bulawayo almost 4 months ago, how different my life would be now. I had hoped that we would arrive in a place better than the one we had left, but it was not to be. For there is no place on earth where my father is alive. During the 2 weeks I was in hospital, the finality of his death hit home. Grace and I spoke about him constantly, recalling for each other our separate memories. The Shona believe that death is a journey, the success of which depends on the living. So he is not entirely gone. My father is on a journey, and I will now live my life. And how I live my life will determine how he reaches his destination. One of the first things I did after I left the hospital was to take Grace and Boubacar to the mountain I had seen from my hospital bed, to welcome my father back into our lives. We disembarked from the cable car that carried us swiftly past the cliffs to the top of Table Mountain and made our way along one of the many paths that led to the spectacular views of city and sea below. And though I struggled with my crutches along the uneven path, I was determined not to let my leg be the focus of our day. Amongst the rocks I found a private place that looked out over the gentle curve of Table Bay, knowing that far beyond the horizon lay the continent of Africa. "Zimbabwe is in that direction," Boubacar said to me, pointing straight ahead. 2,500 kilometers from here due north. 2,500 kilometers. It was hard to believe that I had travelled so far, but harder still to grasp that it had changed within me. The Patson who began his journey in Bulawayo was nothing like the Patson who was standing on that mountain. "The food is ready," Grace called, and I marvelled at the confident way she placed the bowl of sadza and meat stew that she prepared in the centre of a small cloth spread neatly over a rock. In the few weeks I have begun to appreciate just how much Grace's journey has changed her too. She seldom leaves my side, and we speak for hours about all that happened to her. She has told me about the abandoned children she saw drifting through the showground at Messina, how in Alexandra she felt the hatred for foreigners among the local people, and she has admitted to a fear of being alone among strangers. That sparkle that I always took for granted is gone now, and at night she has nightmares. Boubacar reminded me that just as it will take time for me to accept living with one leg, Grace will need time to accept what she has lost. I did not know that your father had a habit of taking snuff, said Boubacar, handing me the tobacco and sorghum beer that are required for the Bira ceremony. He didn't. These are the ingredients that are always used, I said as I solemnly placed the small packet of tobacco next to the food, and then poured the sorghum beer over all of it. The Bira ceremony is the way the Shona welcome back into the family the wandering spirit of the deceased. The ritual is always held some time after the family member has died to call back the ancestor spirit to look after the children left behind. We held hands and I did my best to remember the words my father had said so long ago to my mother's spirit. We are calling you back, Baba, to be with us. I am asking you to be that you guide and protect your family. Be kind to us. Remember Grace and me, for we remember you. We welcome you back into our family. Come back, Baba. We miss you, Grace whispered. We sat together in silence until the solemnity of the moment had passed. Sitting there together, Boubacar pointed out Signal Hill to us, the place where the cannon goes off every day at noon, Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela had spent much of his 27 years in prison, and to the west the vineyards and faraway mountains of Stellenbosch. We talked about the city below, what it might be like to live there, and how different it is to Zimbabwe. Have you decided what you want to do, Patson, about the stones? Boubacar's question was long overdue. On the day I left my hospital, after saying my goodbyes to all the people who had taken such good care of me, I had told Boubacar about the diamonds in Dr. Morris's safe and how they got there. It had seemed wrong to leave them behind. I knew I had to take responsibility for them, so I had given them to Boubacar for safekeeping, knowing that sooner or later I would have to make a decision. Phone the Baron, I said finally. Tell him I am honouring our agreement. I have something special I want to sell. The Moyo Home, Sea Point, Cape Town, the 5th of December. Dear Baba and Amai, my beloved parents, Joseph and Shingai Moyo. I never understood the meaning of the dream I had the night you came to me, Amai. I don't know if dreams are meant to be significant or even if one should pay them any attention. I think perhaps they are there to help you work out your thoughts of the day. But maybe they are puzzles from the ancestors that we are challenged to solve. So this is how I have understood the dreams I've had on my last night on the diamond fields. The Y-shaped stick was a symbol of me. The curling vines were you, Baba, and together the goddess and the baobab tree were watching over me, your son, your creation. You both wanted a future for me that gleamed like a skyscraper soaring through the clouds. This is all for you, you said, Amai, when you showed me the entrance to the many brightly lit rooms. And so after talking with Boubacar and Grace about the diamonds and what they mean and what we should do with them, we decided they were gifts from you. Look to Grace, you told me, and if I hadn't come to find her in Cape Town, Dr. Morris would never have found the stones. I decided to walk through the doors of that skyscraper to explore all that life may bring me. The garages may help me, but I can only build the skyscraper of my life. And I promise you, Baba, that I will not allow them to drive me into any tree. The Baron came to Cape Town, inspected the stones with his loupe, and a few weeks later I became a very wealthy young man. Then a lot of things started happening all at once. I got 2 new prostheses, one for enhanced activity and one for general use. I'm still struggling with my physio, but I'm getting stronger and Dr. Morris is pleased with my progress. Bubakar has found a job as a bank security officer, and the 3 of us have moved into a flat in Sea Point overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Every day I exercise along the promenade with the taste of the sea in my mouth. Grace goes to St. Cyprian's School and loves being in class again. I was accepted to a school called Bishop's, and I have a whole term under my belt. And, Baba, you would approve of how strict my teachers are. Everything that has happened in Marangi is behind us now. I feel sad about Zimbabwe. Some days I feel that I have lost my country. Who knows, maybe one day I'll go back. I had to work up a lot of courage before I was able to phone Sheena. I told her the truth about everything. It was a long phone call, and by the end we were both laughing. I invited her and her family to come to Cape Town for the December holidays. I hope that they come. Baba, this is the story I have told of who I am today. But when I've come to this page, the very last page of the diary you gave to me in those tobacco sheds, I found a message. The words were scribbled in the bottom right-hand corner waiting for me, and it seems only right that they be the final words of my diary. I love you both, my parents. Patson. Yeah, Half Prince, I know you. You're gonna make it. Even though it looks bad now, you're gonna be alright. Did I ever lie to you? No. So believe, Patson, and it'll be good again because the G's are in the knees, and that's all I'm saying, and someone as bright as you should know what I'm talking about. You're my best friend, Patson. You always will be till the day I die. Arby's.